Okay. All right. Well, welcome everyone. I think I said this a little earlier, but I'm just going to turn the keys over to Joanne. She's done this several times and she's got a lot of great information to share. And so I'm just going to sit back and listen and chime in every once in a while. But mostly I want Joanne to kind of take the lead on this one because she's got a great, she summarizes it so well, everything that you do, that it's really good to listen to. And I will send a summary email, so don't feel like if you miss something that you have to go back and get it. I promise I'll send out an email before Friday with a link to the recording as well as everything that Joanne talks about. So
great. Sounds good. Okay, so I'm so excited about this transition to college meeting. And just a little bit of background. So when I was in college, I was an RA, a resident assistant. And then in graduate school, since I was an RA, I had an opportunity to be an RD, a resident director. So I was in charge of a residence hall. And my scariest night was one night as a residence hall director. I lived in an apartment in the hall, and probably 2 a.m., pounding on my back door. I rush out of bed, open up the door, two very scared freshmen, nearly in tears, trying to get words out to tell me that their friend is really in trouble. So I go flying up several flights of stairs after them. We go into a room that reeked of alcohol. As soon as I walked in, you could just smell the alcohol. And their friend, who was passed out on the floor, and they weren't able to revive her, and thank goodness came to get me, because of course I called the paramedics who came and they took her. Later the paramedics said to me, if they had just left her for the night, she would not have survived. Her blood alcohol level was so high. And ever since that night, I have thought so much about how we spend so much time talking to students about getting into college, and we don't spend enough time talking about what a big transition this is for them, and how they're now going to be in charge of making some pretty big deal and adult decisions. So I created this workshop, this program, and I do this frequently whenever I can, and with my own students individually, because I just think it's so important. We've got to talk about this stuff. So I'm glad we're going to go through this tonight, and I'm happy to answer questions as they come up, or at the end, or if you think of something later. But I just think it's such an important piece for us to talk about now, and then for parents and students to continue talking about. So Michelle, you can see the slide, right?
Yep, we can see the slide.
Right, so there we go. Okay, so this one really is just almost this quick think back about how just 1 year ago, students were in the midst of testing their SATs or ACTs, and then they were getting into essay writing and doing applications. Parents have probably been thinking about college since their student was born. But students have been thinking about this maybe even in middle school, when you were starting to figure out, okay, which math class is going to make it so that I can get to this math class in 9th grade and then 10th grade. And you did it. Like all of this work, and we are the eve of final decision day, and students have made their decisions and paid their deposits, and you did it. This part's done. So good job to all of these students and parents. So now there are some things that are going to be happening over the summer, and I just want to make sure that everybody kind of keeps up with some of this stuff. There's going to be a lot of communication from your school now, and they primarily communicate by email, and pretty much it's just to the student. So students, you've got to check your email regularly, and I know a lot don't, but you have to, because you're going to miss important dates and deadlines and things that the college needs for you to know. Parents, you might want to just check in and make sure that your students are checking their email, because if they say, oh, I haven't heard anything from the college, something's up, because you're going to hear pretty regularly over the summer from your colleges.
And that's the email in the student portal, right? So it's the school email, just to clarify, because a lot of kids have maybe an email that they get to their phone, but we're talking about the email that the school has assigned to them, and it's usually their first and last name at whatever college, so it's that email that they're needing to check.
Right.
Typically, that college assumes that, oh, this is your new email address, but not often. Kids don't always get it. They think that, oh no, I checked my email, there was nothing. No, they want you to check in the portal in that particular email that they've assigned to you.
Yep. Class registration happens at different times at different colleges. Many will do that at orientation, or some colleges put out dates. They'll email those dates and say, pick a date and you can either come to campus or meet this way with an advisor. They all handle this in different ways. And some schools just register students their first semester. Students don't have any choice over the classes that they're going to take. Again, you're going to get all this information, but you need to stay on top of it. So students, you are registering classes in the fall. That's important. Roommate assignments. Again, every college handles this in a different way. So students might have a form that they need to fill out. Some students find their roommates on Facebook. So they can ask questions. You can call up the admissions office to find out how roommates are assigned if you're not sure. But this is something else that will be happening over the summer. And students will be reaching out to their future roommates. You'll get contact information, and then that's how you can talk about who's doing what and all that fun stuff and kind of get to know each other.
Just here, I said I wasn't going to talk, but here I'm talking. So there you go. Two things I was going to say. A lot of colleges now will have assessment, like a roommate match, kind of like Match.com, so that is something fun, and it usually is pretty accurate. If you're a neat person, you don't want to be paired with somebody who lists themselves as not neat and that sort of thing. And the other thing I would recommend, especially to parents, I just find it to be helpful with just various information, getting questions asked so you don't have to call the school. If you happen to be on Facebook, look for the parents page at your particular university. Most universities have a parents page that is typically run by somebody within administration, but you can get questions answered. If you want to know where to park for room, how early can you move in, what's the date, what's it look like, how is traffic, how is parking, where should you park, are there anything like that you need to know for move-in day, can usually be found on these pages, just in case you don't get to see the email. Again, our kids aren't good about, or some of our children like my own are not as good about saying all the details. So if I didn't know to ask about parking, you get down there and you're like, well, Luke, where are you supposed to park? Well, I don't know. So stuff like that you can usually find on this parenting page.
Yep.
Yeah.
So most students are going to need a physical before they enter college. They're probably going to need some vaccines if they don't already have some of the required vaccines. So this is something that you want to start thinking about now, and maybe even contact your insurance company, because some insurance companies will only pay for a physical each calendar year, which might not match up to the start of college. And most colleges have a specific form that needs to be filled out by the doctor. So again, that will be communicated, or it will be somewhere on the website, but you want to get that form and get that scheduled. Shopping is sort of the fun part, I think, but you're going to have a lot of shopping to do, and I have a little list that I'm going to share in just a moment. And then orientation dates also will be communicated. Some students just go back early, a few days or a week early, and that's how that college runs their orientation. Others set up several different dates, and the students have to choose which one. Some of those dates even start in May at some schools. So this is something else you just want to be ready for. The other thing that I like to mention to students about this over the summer thing is this push and pull that they're going to start to feel with friends and their family and parents. There starts to be this realization that time is short and things are changing. And so I just warn students that they're going to want to spend time with their friends are going to want to spend time with them, but their parents want to spend time with the student as well. And to really try and balance this a little bit, think about it in advance. There is a push and pull there that can feel uncomfortable at times. So just something to keep in mind and talk about. Michelle, you were going to talk a little bit about for athletes. There are some other steps.
Yes. So if you have a student athlete, and I know I have a few, there is one more checklist of things that you need to do from an NCAA standpoint. So if you're playing at Division I or Division II, you really, what I'll do in the follow-up email is send a link to the list of things that you need to do. It's a completion form. You need to submit your grades. There's things of that nature that you need to do if you're an athlete at an NCAA school. So I'll send that link over. I just wanted to highlight that, you know, look for it if you're an athlete, because this is important things that need to be completed. Now, I will say again, back to them emailing, usually the coach will communicate this to the students too. They don't usually let it fall through the cracks, but if it's something that you can get done before the coach has to tell you to get it done, that's always nice. And I will tell you just from personal experience, they usually have different shots they need or different physicals they need. Like an athlete needs a little bit more than just a regular student coming in, and you have to upload it. I mean, it's a big process to be a registered athlete at a school. So just make sure that you're following up with your student athlete and making sure all of that's getting done. There's a portal that says, you know, here's all the things that you need to make sure you have done. What are your medical records, primarily all around medical records, but some other information that they're gathering. So just make sure that's all completed, and make sure your student is checking email, because sometimes if that doesn't get done and you have a fall sport, then you don't play. So that's a critical piece.
Yeah. Right. All right, some legal things that are now different because your student is about to be a college student and a real adult. So there are a few things that I just want you to be aware of. HIPAA refers to, and I'm sure you've heard of this in your doctor's office, refers to medical records. And FERPA refers to student records. So those first two, you want to have forms on file. Some colleges actually have these forms, and you can find them on their website. And again, talking to other parents through Facebook parent pages can be really helpful. A lot of schools have a parent group, non-Facebook, like they might actually meet monthly. I know that one of my kids' schools, they do that. And that's where you can start to get some more information about this. So you need to have FERPA forms on file if you want to ever talk to financial aid, or if you want to be able to check grades, or maybe call the registrar's office about an AP class that doesn't seem to be showing up. FERPA is something that the student has to agree to, and often it usually needs to be notarized. I mean, it's an official form. So this is something that that students and parents should be talking about, as some students may say, I'll take care of it. I don't want you, mom and dad, involved in this. And we have to respect that. But make sure then know that if there's a hitch with financial aid or a question about anything, that the school will not talk to a parent unless there's that FERPA form on file. HIPAA has to do with the medical forms. So again, once a student is a college student and has turned 18, parents are not privy to any information. A student could be in a hospital and a parent would not be notified if there's not HIPAA forms available and signed in advance. So these are some things you want to take care of in advance. There are groups out there that there's services that offer these kinds of forms. I know Mama Bear, we've talked about before, is one of those services. Michelle's at $50 for the...
Yeah, for the bundle. Again, so for somebody like me, I just like it all together in one. So it's a $50 package. Again, if you want to check with an attorney, if you're that kind of person who's worried, is this good enough? I just trust that it looks legalese enough to me, so I fill it out, and it's very simple. It's an online form. You put the name of the student and some other information, address, and it automatically fills in everything. You print it off, have your son or daughter sign it, and then take it to a notary, and it's really very easy. So and I'll send a link to that. The one we like is Mama Bear Legal Forms, but please understand we are not attorneys. So, take a look, make your own decision about this. My thinking is that if I go into a hospital, I have something signed, the HIPAA form signed. It is state dependent, so that's why it gets a little complicated. But with this Mama Bear Legal Forms, you put in your state and, according to their website, and again, I'll say this as a parent, right? I'm looking at this as a parent, not as a professional, because I don't know the legalese of everything, but it looks to be sufficient for what we need it for.
Yeah, and you can certainly talk to an attorney if you have any questions about these, or contact the college and see what they offer.
Right. Oh, and the FERPA form is often at the college. I think Joanne and I were talking about that. So at both my son and daughter's colleges, the FERPA form was at the college, and she had to sign their form. So with FERPA, which you remember is the financial aid and grades, any release of information, that is done sometimes at the college level. So you'll just have to ask. But usually they tell you, hey, if you want, that we have these forms available.
Yep. In terms of insurance, I know when I was in college, probably the most expensive thing I took was my $60 typewriter. But now when students go to college, they're taking their $1,000 cell phone and their laptop and their gaming system. And you may want to check with your homeowner's insurance to see if they cover residence hall stuff in the event of loss or damage and those kinds of things. Some insurance companies do cover that, or you may be able to get a rider for that. So it's just something to think about, since students tend to have a lot of expensive things nowadays. If they're living off campus, maybe probably not their first year, but maybe as an upperclassman, you can also find out about renter's insurance, because that might be something that, again, things have gotten very expensive, and maybe that might make some sense. I also like to talk to students about identity theft. They're going to be in public places now and on public Wi-Fi systems. And so I really encourage students to make sure that they're logging off when they're, working on their laptop. They memorize their social security number, because you use that a lot in college, and probably not a great idea to have it written, John Doe and then the social security number on a piece of paper. Students often don't realize that they really shouldn't loan out their driver's license or their credit card. They've not encountered this before, and they might not think twice about a roommate saying, oh, I want to buy this, but I don't have a credit card. I'll give you the cash. And just have conversations with them that they're an adult, and now they really got to be careful about their identity and what the consequences could be if they're not careful about that. So some financial things to think about, now that we talked about some of the legal stuff. It may be helpful, typically is helpful, if a student has a local bank account. So you can check with the college to find out often they'll have bank accounts right on campus, or they have ATMs on campus. So a student might want to start up a small account where maybe you can put money in if need be, or they just have access to money that is convenient for them right there on campus. Another thing that I want parents and students to talk about are credit card offers, which are all over the place at college. And students wind up often signing up for credit cards because they get a free water bottle,
right.
And a backpack from another one. And these credit card companies don't necessarily have the best students in mind, and they will give them credit and let them start charging things. And again, have conversations with students about what credit cards are all about, and get them a credit card before they go to college, and perhaps they forego the free water bottle for the credit card company that's at the college. So we've had some students get into a big financial mess over these credit cards, and we'll talk about that beforehand. You'll also want to be finalizing financial aid. So you've gotten award letters from colleges. Just so you know, you get to cross things off of award letters. Some families don't want the student loan that's offered, for example, and so you can put a line through that. Or if the parent loan is on there and you don't want the parent loan, you can put a line through that. Talk to the financial aid office, find out what you need to do in order to get all of this finalized. And then for families that are using those student loans, there's going to be some things that students need to do. They've got to go through some required counseling. They're going to find some things. All this is going to happen over the summer. So for just so that you know, to be aware, to be looking out for that kind of thing.
So one just quick thing about that, just we're having our session next Tuesday on loans. So for some people, I know loans have to be part of the equation, so we want to make sure you're well informed about that. For the other thing, student loans and crossing things off, at both my kids' colleges, they automatically added health insurance to the tune of like $800 a semester.
Yep.
So, and perhaps you're going to talk about this, Joanne, I'm sorry, but I just wanted to make sure if I wouldn't have reviewed, so you have to have the FERPA in order to review the financial aid offer. If I had not reviewed it, I would have just paid the bill, not thinking about it. You actually have to you have to decline it. They automatically put it on. They don't say, hey, does your son or daughter need health insurance? Here it is. No, it's listed as an expense. And like I said, I think it was $853 a semester at Luke's school, and I had to send in proof of insurance. It wasn't hard. Oh, and you had to send it in by a certain date. So you have to send it in by, so be sure to find out about your insurance, because it's a huge, again, when we're counting pennies to make sure we can get our kids in college, that $800 a semester is a big chunk of change, I think, for an easy fix.
Yeah, and to piggyback on that, in terms of when you actually get the bill, which usually comes late July-ish, and is due in about 2 weeks,
Right.
Go over that bill carefully. They put in some optional things, but it doesn't say it's optional. So I know at my son's school, I had a fee that I didn't understand, and when I called, it's for the student newspaper, but we didn't have to pay that. But it was part of the bill. I didn't know that we didn't have to pay it. So if you have any questions, call the financial aid, call the financial aid office and ask them about your bill, line by line.
And I will say I never got a physical bill. Both my kids' school, it's just online, and I had to have access to it. So, and I got an email saying your payment is due, kind of thing. So it's not, they're going away from paper. So some schools I'm sure still do it, but my kids' school did not.
Right. Agreed. You may want to contact your auto insurance company, especially if your student's not taking a car. If they're already registered on a car in your family and they're not in college, you might be able to save a little money. And if they are taking a car to college, the insurance company probably needs to know that as well. And oftentimes, even though they take the car to college, it's just sitting. So you still might be able to get a reduction in your insurance bill. But it might make sense to talk to your auto insurer. And then the last item I have on this sheet is to just talk about a budget. Families really vary in this. Some students, they're responsible for their pizza money and whatever else they might be spending throughout the semester. Other families, this is an opportunity to say, we'll give you X number of dollars a month, but you'll need to cover anything beyond that to your budget. Students just often, they're not used to this. They're used to being at home and there's food all the time, and they ask for money, and this is all very different. So have a conversation about budget stuff in advance. Another kind of related to financial stuff are textbooks. So textbooks can get to be really expensive. They can be hundreds of dollars each, and so now we can be in thousands of dollars because they've got 4 or 5 classes. There are lots of different ways to get textbooks. So think outside the box a little bit. I usually recommend to students that they just wait until their first class. And I know that makes parents very nervous. What do you think you're going to class and you didn't get a book? But oftentimes the professors will have things in place. Like they might say, we have 5 copies of the textbook in the library. Or the professor might say, it's okay to get the edition before this, even though on the syllabus I have, the 5th edition, it's pretty much the same as the 4th edition. Or the professor might say, we don't really use the textbook in this class very much. So if you try and wait, you can really find out. And then students are able to get textbooks, of course, so quickly nowadays. Campuses have bookstores and they almost always match prices. So if after the student leaves the class, they can just walk over to the bookstore, and oftentimes they can be on their phone to find the best price for the book so that they can show it to the people at the bookstore. So the best way to compare is, I think, this slugbooks.com. Students can go and you enter that long ISB, whatever that number is that librarians would know. It's a long number. Go to slugbooks.com, you enter that long number in, and then it gives you a chart. And it shows how much it would cost to buy new, how much it would cost to buy used, how much it would cost to rent the book. So that's a site then that students could take to the bookstore and say, well, Amazon's charging this much, but you guys are charging $10 more, and most bookstores will meet that price. So it's a way to save a little bit of money. A lot of students rent books nowadays, and it's very easy. It comes in the mail, lickety split, and then they'll get a notice a week or 2 before the end of the semester saying your book is due on December 28th with an envelope, and then the student just sends it back. So Amazon has a great program, Campus Rentals, Chegg. Those are all very easy to rent. And students can still highlight in them. They ask that you not excessively highlight, but you're still allowed to, and they know there's going to be a little wear and tear on the books. But just some ways to maybe save a little bit of money on textbooks, because that can really add up.
Just make sure you send them back. I just got my notice today for one of my son's books, and it said, turn it in by May 30th or something like that. A full price book is $153. So if he does not get that in, guess he's going to have to pay $153. But they have to be responsible to send it back. And with moving, you're moving out, so I'm telling my kids, send the books back before you load up the car, because I don't want them to get lost or not found.
Very true. All right, so I said we were going to talk again about shopping briefly. Notice up here at the top where it says residence hall rooms are small. New parents tend to forget this. There is not a lot of space in these rooms. So really think through what you're going to need and what you might want to purchase. Bed Bath & Beyond and Target, they run programs just specifically for residence hall rooms. So you can go online and they'll have checklists on there, and they'll have lots of coupons because they want you to come shop there. I just jotted down a couple of things that maybe some people might not think about at first. Mattress topper, because those mattresses tend to not very, very comfortable and quite thin, and who knows how many people have slept on it. Like, you want to encase it a little bit. So that's why oftentimes people will buy sort of cushy mattress toppers, and things like making a first aid kit at home, and some kind of a little tool kit, and some kind of a little cleaning supply kit. Just a few things to think about. Fans can be helpful, of course, to move the air in the room, but also as sort of a noise blocker. Another thing to consider. Duct tape's great for everything. Those command hooks, they don't leave a mark on the wall, so students can hang things. But there's lots of lists online if you want to get a more thorough shopping list. And again, Target and Bed Bath & Beyond will be happy to help you with that. So this is where I start to kind of transition a little bit with students to talk about how you're going to be packing up all your stuff, but you're also packing values, which have developed over the course of these 17 or 18 years. your traditions and your experiences. This is a time now where we want to start encouraging students to take some risks in college, to take healthy risks in college, because you want to be growing and developing and learning about different religions and cultures and other families' traditions and experiences. And this is such a great time for students to open their minds and learn some new things. But to be thinking about this in a healthy way, because we have found recently through studies that front part of that yellow part of the brain where it says self-control under construction, we have come to realize that that part of the brain right up here is not fully developed until about age 25 or 26. And what that means is that our teenagers are less likely to think before they act. They're less likely to pause and kind of consider the consequences of certain actions. And even if they do start to think, they often don't modify their behaviors. Like they talk themselves out of what the bad consequence could be. And that's all because that frontal lobe is not fully developed yet. So we know they're going to, I say to students, we parents know that you're going to mess up because that frontal part of your brain's not yet developed, but you can't keep blaming that part of your brain because you do have control over your thoughts and your behaviors. And we want to make sure that when you're making some of these bad choices, that they're not choices that then are going to haunt you for a long time. So when we talk about health risks, we want students to, as I said, try out some things that you might not have tried before because you have an opportunity to do that at college. And to really just be open to maybe, find the juggling club or the Quidditch team or things that you've not been exposed to before. And get involved in campus activities right away because that's how you're going to start to make your friend groups. So get involved in things that you're interested in and you'll find kind of like-minded people. These are all those healthy risks. These are good things to do when you're in college. And just for students to know that they're the boss of their experience. So students, you can sit in your dorm room and go home every weekend. I mean, that's one way to go through college. Probably not the best way. Far better to get involved in some things and get to know people and take some of these healthy risks because that's what's going to make this such a great experience for students.
So I'll tell you a couple things that my son tried that I maybe would have tried it anyway, but beach volleyball, he loves it. So we happen to be in Florida. He's right by the beach. So this is a really good thing. And the other thing that has become a little bit of an obsession for him is rock climbing. So he started a club on campus. He has a whole network of friends that he never would have run into except for his passion with climbing. So I just want to, when you talk about new experiences, I think that's kind of what you're talking about. Think a little outside the box, maybe try something that you never thought of. Like, I don't know that he'd considered rock climbing as a sport or as something to do, and now he really loves it. So it can lead to fun things. And I think for the record, because who knows who's going to be watching, when we talk about try some things out you may not have tried before, I don't think we're talking alcohol or any mood altering.
Oh, we're getting to that. Yes.
Okay.
Agreed.
Okay, good.
So just a couple of statistics that are, I think, important for students to know going into this. So 25% of students are not going to return to the same college after their first year. And that can be for lots of different reasons. Some students, just get there and they pick a major that their college doesn't have. So now they need to choose another college. A lot of times, though, it's for some other reasons. Things like feeling really homesick. So I say to students, 2/3 of students feel homesick. So expect that you're probably going to feel homesick. It feels very weird that first morning to wake up like 4 feet from a person who's a stranger. That's your roommate and you will get to know them, but it's weird sharing a room with a stranger and using a hall bathroom with 30 other people, and you're going to yearn for your bedroom and your bathroom at home, and you have to kind of push through this. And I really encourage students to not go home the first 4 to 6 weeks that they are on campus. Stay there on the weekends. If you're feeling homesick, knowing that many are going to, have your parents come visit you, take you out to lunch, take you out to dinner. It's really help you in the long run to just push through this feeling of homesickness. But it's very common. So don't be surprised if that happens. Over half of students report having problems with their roommates. Remember, that's why resident advisors, why those RAs are around. But it's important to talk to your roommate. If there's something, and there is going to be one or more things that drive you nuts about your roommate, have conversations. That's all part of this college experience. So to be able to say, I really early class on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and you're still up at 11 p.m., being loud and playing music, I can't sleep. You've got to have these conversations. And they're easy to have, but push through that because this is such an important part of growing up. Over half of students report feeling overwhelmed and having feelings of anxiety. And a third of students are reporting that they feel so depressed that it's hard to function, which is, these are such sad statistics, but we see this in the news all the time about the levels of anxiety and the levels of depression that college students are feeling. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that, but I just wanted to kind of frame this around some of these statistics. So some decisions that students are going to need to make include academic decisions. And when I talk with students about this, the first thing I say is, you need to go to class. Now, high school, of course, you're required to be there. You don't really have a choice. College, you don't necessarily have to go to class, but that's not a very healthy decision to make. A lot of schools, they're not taking roll, they're not taking roll or checking to see who's there. Students could choose not to go, but if you want to be successful in college, you need to get yourself to class. You also need to take good notes, and you have to figure out what that is for you. Some students bring their laptops to class and they type up their notes. Research has shown that it's actually better if you hand write your notes and then read them over later, or type them into your laptop or onto your computer later. You need to study. So the general rule of thumb is that for every hour that a student spends in class, they should be spending 3 hours studying. So when you think about that 3 credit class that you might have, maybe Monday, Wednesday, Friday from 10 to 11, you should be then spending 9 hours during that week studying for that class. A lot of time. So students often don't manage their time well because it looks like you have all this empty time and you get to do all this fun stuff. Studying needs to be at the top of that list of the things that you're doing. So you may have to schedule your study time. It's not a good idea in college to procrastinate because things move very rapidly. Students, you are there for 15 weeks. And if you kind of blow up those first couple of weeks because you're busy having some fun, because you're independent now and you have freedom, it's going to be so hard to catch up. So you do need to hit the ground running and stay on top of things. When a professor, you're going to have a syllabus and it's going to say what's happening each week. When they want you to read 3 chapters the first week, get 3 chapters read, because the following week there's going to be another 3. And you can see how this can start to snowball if you're not staying on top of your academic work. Professors have office hours. They are often surprised how few students come to office hours. They love when students come to office hours. Seek out your professor, especially if you're having help. If you're starting to need some help or falling behind. But even if you're not, go meet your professor. Go sit down and chat with them and talk about what's going on in class. Every college has some kind of support services set up. They call it different things. It might be a writing center, it might be a math center, they might offer peer tutoring. You're paying for that as part of the tuition that you're paying. Use those services. The first college paper you have to write, go to the writing center. Have them read it over. You've never written a college paper before. Get some feedback. Oftentimes, professors will give you a little boost in grade too, by the way, if you go to the writing center and have that looked over. But you are in charge of your academic life at college. So it's going to be really important for parents and students to talk about that over the summer so that students are ready when they get there. So social decisions. So we talked about the academic stuff, and that's an important part of college, but so is the social part. And again, I want to make sure that students know that they're in control of this part. So you've got freedom here now to decide how you're going to be spending your social time. First of all, it's important to learn the campus rules. Every college will have their handbook available to students. It's usually online now. It's not a physical book anymore. Students should be reading through the campus rules so that you know what's expected of you. They are very clear about how they handle alcohol, how they handle sexual assault. It is all in that handbook. So read through it, do that over the summer, so that you know what the rules are and what the consequences are. This will help in terms of making those social decisions. And just keeping in mind that you're staying true. Remember, you're packing your values, your experiences, and your traditions. You're staying true to those things, even though you've now got some freedom and independence. So in terms of alcohol and drugs, we all know that there are alcohol and drugs on college campuses. I do think that a lot of students have this perception that everybody drinks, maybe even that everybody does pot or does, uses other drugs. That's not true. So there have been many studies done, and when you ask college students if they think that some students don't drink, they'll estimate about 5%. They'll say, yeah, probably about 5% of college students don't drink. When really about 20% of students, according to this recent Harvard study that I read, abstain from drinking. And that can be for a variety of reasons. Maybe it's religious, maybe it's, being underage and feeling very strongly that since it's illegal, the student's not going to do that. So lots of reasons, but students tend to underestimate how many of their fellow students are not drinking. It's important for students to know that colleges have really strict policies. So once a student leaves high school, where maybe things could have been a little more lax, it's not at colleges. There are huge fines for underage drinking. Students are often put on probation if they are caught drinking underage. It's tricky on college campuses, of course, because about half students are not 21, which means it's illegal for them to be drinking. And the other half of students are of legal age. So I know this, colleges really kind of wrestle with this a little bit, but they're becoming even stricter, I would say, about underage drinking. So alcohol tends to make up the vast majority of substance-related problems on campuses, and recognizing an alcohol problem can be difficult for college students. So we're finding that students are doing more dangerous behaviors, like we're hearing things about, maybe some parents remember this from their college days, front loading before going to parties. So students nowadays are drinking quickly and drinking to get drunk fast, which can, of course, cause problems because a lot of students don't realize that they can drink to the point where it can be fatal. And I think that we need to share that message with students. Parents often think that their kids don't want to talk to them about kinds of things, but we know from studies done with kids, with teenagers, they want their parents to talk about drugs and alcohol. So it can be an uncomfortable conversation. I think a lot of parents are a little afraid that their students are going to say, well, did you drink underage when you were in college? And I suggest be honest. Just be honest and open up the conversation. Talk with them about what you've learned. They really do care about what you say, and you might be the little person on their shoulder when they're in specific situations. Students might need an out, so they might need something like a line that I'm on allergy medication, so I can't drink. They might need some help trying to navigate this because they're probably going to go to parties and there's probably going to be alcohol there. So trying to figure out in advance how to best handle that is going to be helpful. Of course, there are drugs on campus too. We're seeing a lot of legalization of marijuana, and I personally think that is young people this false sense of thinking that it's okay. I think that socially we're a little bit ahead of the science of marijuana. So we've got to talk to students about this, because depending on what state they go to college in, it might be legal to use marijuana there. So we've got to have those conversations. And marijuana, of course, sometimes is in cookies and brownies, and students might not even be aware. So you've got to talk to them about the effect of marijuana in their system, and knowing what it is that they're eating and drinking as well.
And just to point back out what you talked about, that part of the brain that's not yet mature, what they're finding now with so many people doing marijuana younger and younger is that it's really impacting that particular part of the brain which is not done growing. So it is especially dangerous for college kids. I don't mean, for consistent use, they're showing that it does impact how smart you are, your level of motivation. There's a lot of things that pot does that turns out are not in the best interest. But I think you're right. I think it's socially acceptable now, and so kids don't really realize it. They're like, oh, it's just pot.
Right. Yeah.
So, we're going to have the same conversation like we did with cigarettes. No, it's just cigarettes. Now look at all the cigarette. So I have a feeling that someday we're going to be back to saying, look at all the evidence we now have to show once it got legal, how the detrimental effects of it. So we just have to be mindful of that.
Yeah, just a couple of other things we're seeing a lot of on college campuses. A lot of Adderall become the study drug. Some students who have ADD or ADHD and are on medication, you need to keep that medication somewhere safe, probably locked up. Students are stealing it from other students. Be aware. Also, ecstasy, which was sort of a drug back in the 90s, has started to come back on college campuses. This is where we warn students, don't leave a cup sitting somewhere and then go back and drink it. So sometimes, drugs are date rape drugs that are referred to are being slipped into drinks. Students just need to be aware. I don't want students to go to college afraid, because 99% of people are very wonderful and nice and friendly, but they do need to be aware. And maybe they didn't have to be aware at their high school or at home, but they're in a different environment, and so they've got to be aware. So this is where it's helpful maybe for parents to even start having conversations with students about where the student's line is, making intentional decisions now about how they're going to handle themselves in these social situations. In terms of even maybe using fake IDs, that's become a popular thing, so students can get into bars. Let students know that you know about this stuff, that you're aware, and talk to them about what your expectations are, and then try and have conversations with students about where their line is and where they're going to draw that line. Something else that I think is important for students to think about is the whole idea of the bystander effect, which you probably think about in terms of fires. So if there's a fire, everybody's gathered round, and everybody assumes that somebody has contacted the fire department, but no one has because we all thought that somebody else did. This can also happen in college at different situations where students might see something and just assume that somebody else is taking care of that and not reach out and get help. So that was my example at the very beginning of those two scared freshmen who were worried about their friend. And so they took it upon themselves to go wake up the adult, which I'm sure was very scary, but thank goodness they did. So students, again, as thinking about the kind of person they want to be on a college campus, that they need to know where the safe places are or the safe people are. And they absolutely are. Resident RAs, their residence hall directors, their security, there's the Good Samaritan law. Students are protected if they report something because they were afraid that someone was in some danger.
Something else in case they're the one that needs help. I watched a show on this one time and it was really good. And this whole bystander effect. If you need help, if you're in a situation where you need help and people are just kind of standing or just walking by you, there's been an accident and people are just walking by, you need to be the person that points to somebody, anybody, and says, you call for help. Because once you point it out to somebody else or that them a step to take, they'll take it. But it is this bystander effect, the reason that people don't seem to take this serious. It's not that it's not serious. They just assume, oh, somebody's called about that fire. I don't need to call. But if you're the person in the situation, your hair's on fire, like the picture, you point to somebody and you say, you call for help, or you come here and get this car off me, or whatever it is that you need help with. But if you individually assign a task to somebody, it will help. It will get you help. Where if you just assume people are going to help you, this happens all the time.
Yeah. So of course, as students are thinking about drug and alcohol, there's also sexual activity on college campuses. And again, I think it's something that can feel awkward for parents and students to talk about. You have to talk about it because it's there. So talking about things like birth control, talking about things like sexually transmitted diseases, and also in that conversation, talking about parents, your values, your expectations, letting students talk a little bit about their feelings and their values. This helps them just start to think about this before they're in a particular situation. A lot of the colleges now are requiring students to do drug and like a substance abuse training. It's typically online, and many schools now are also having students do a sexual assault online training where they're sharing some information, they're sharing campus rules and expectations, and then students, are learning through that. So that's one way where students are starting to understand what might be, part of the values of the college campus and what the rules are on a college campus. A few things that I like to make sure that I'm pointing out to students. Unfortunately, the highest incidence of sexual assault happens during the first year and typically happens during the first month. Again, 99% of people are wonderful, but there are some people out there who are preying on freshmen, typically freshman girls, but not necessarily always the girls. And this needs to be talked about so that, and I'll say when I'm sitting down with a girl student, I'll say to the guy, watch out for the girls, like this could be your sister. Keep an eye out on what's going on. Stand up for what you believe in if you think that things are happening that shouldn't be happening. And I know that's hard in a social situation, but be that one to stand up for what you think is important. And to girls, stick together. Just being cautious and taking care of yourself and taking care of others. I also want to make sure that students know that if there is any alcohol use, that means there's no consent. I've actually, my background's in mental health counseling, and I've called upon to come to college campuses and work with students after there's been a sexual assault, often there's blaming of the person who's been assaulted because he or she will say, well, you know, I was drinking, and so it's really my fault that this situation happened. If there's any alcohol at all, that means there's no consent. And both parties at any point get to say no or stop. So talk and talk about this. And again, I know it's awkward and difficult conversations to have. Teenagers, they need to hear that from parents. All right, a couple more. I know we're getting close to our hour here. There's all these emotional decisions that have to be made too. So students, you got to sleep. I know that at college, a lot of times, you know, no one's there to tell you to go to bed or even to wake up necessarily. You know how much sleep you need though. So make sure that you're getting the kind of sleep that you need. Make sure that you're eating healthily, which is sometimes hard on a college campus. But again, you know what you can eat to feel good. Doing activity, keeping your stress low, hanging out with people who make you feel good, avoiding people who don't make you feel good, unless it's a professor, because you do need to go to class. So just taking care of yourself emotionally. In terms of physical health, students need to know their own medical history and their own medical story. So parents, it's really important this summer that you're not going to be with them all the time now when they're sick. You're probably been accustomed to always going to the doctor and answering some of the questions that the nurse or the doctor asks. You're not going to be there now. Students need to know about, you know, family history and personal injuries and illnesses and medications that they're on. They need all that information heading into college. They should have a physical copy of their insurance card. Again, possibly they've not had that through high school. And a plan set up for urgent care or emergency care. So there's going to probably be a health center on campus, but it's probably not open 24 hours a day. So you want to make sure that students know where the hospital is, where an urgent care center is. And of course, anybody who's got a chronic medical condition, diabetes, history of seizures, they should have their medical records sent to the College Health Services beforehand. They're super helpful there. So just call health services, explain what's going on, and see what they might need. The student, get all this stuff set up in advance, because you don't want to wait until the student's really sick. And they will be sick at some point during college. So just like you take care of physical health, you also have to be taking care of mental health. We talked about how anxiety and depression rates are really high among college students. And this is the time when mental health disorders come up. Things like schizophrenia tend not to even come out until someone's 18, 19, 20 years old. So there is a possibility that a student is going to run into someone on campus, a roommate, someone who lives in their hall, who's starting to act in a bizarre way. They're going to run into people who might have eating disorders, might have substance abuse problems. There's counseling services available on campus. So a student can go for themselves. They can go because they're worried about somebody else. There are trained people there who are happy to help students deal with, you know, their own problems, or help them deal with other things that they see in other people. So I would just really encourage, and it's very common the first semester for freshmen to go to the counseling center. They're feeling lots of different things, and it's just great to be able to sit down and talk to somebody. So that's a super resource for students. Just a few quick notes for parents. Your role's changing, and it's weird, and you're kind of not sure how you're supposed to be now as the parent of a college student. Parents start to feel all kinds of things. There's some relief that they're gone, and sometimes students really act out those few weeks before they leave for college. So then might even be some guilt because you're feeling some relief that the student's gone, but you're also feeling sad. There's all this stuff happening for parents. So just know that, and know that your student is going to need to feel uncomfortable at times, that's just part of growing up. And so sometimes you're just going to have to be a good listener, and they might call you and complain about this professor and their roommate, and they need to sort through this. So maybe you're advising a bit and you're letting them handle things. And so it's just a new role for parents and for students. So know that in advance and think through some of this and let your student grow through all of this. I'll send this list of resources to you because it's got links throughout, but these are some great resources as you start to think about, and I put the Mama Bear legal forms in here too. So some great places to start to look and think about this exciting transition, because this is it. These students, they're ready. But have some of these conversations over the next couple of months. Teach them how to do laundry. Do what you can to get them prepared, but then let them go experience college and all of the wonderful things that the college will bring. That's long. I know. It was a lot of information.
Well, I think it was great. What I'll do is, I don't know if we're going to post the slide deck, but I'll make sure that any of the resources that Joanne listed in the body of the email, I'll make sure to have the website attached to it so you guys can easily go there. If you have any questions, if something's come up, both Joanne and I have college students, so we have not only, we do this for a living, but we also have college students, so keep that in mind. Yeah, everybody's different. Every student is different. Every parent is different. My daughter and I are very, very close, and she hardly ever called me because she was busy. So, on the one hand, that's what you want, right? We did this for them to grow. And I'm like, well, hello, I'm still your mom, so, it's an interesting transitional time, but, she's thriving, and I couldn't ask for anything better. So I'm tickled. And I didn't really expect my son to call, and he doesn't really call. So but I really thought, so it's just our expectation. We never know what we're going to do or what they're going to do, and everything is the right thing, right? So I know some people get upset, oh, my friend's son or daughter texts them every single day, and it's fine. That's their thing. Don't compare yourself, or my son or daughter's texting, why aren't they, or are they having trouble relating? Everything is fine. Every student is going to handle their separation differently from any other student, and they're just going to out when they need you, and just as long as they know you're there, I think that's all they need.
Yes. Well, good. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions, and we'll share some of this information. And it's an exciting time. It really is, and it works out. It's all okay. You'll figure it out. You'll make parents make some mistakes, the students make some mistakes, but you got to figure it out.
Yep. All right, any questions before we sign off? Okay, well, thank you, everybody. Thanks so much. And, I'll send an email with all the information. And remember, next week at 8:30 is our loan conversation. So if loans have to be a part of the equation, I really encourage you to participate in that. Again, that'll be sent out via a link as well. But it's a lot of money for some people. Even a small loan turns out to be a lot of money. So you want to make sure that you make the best decision for your family. So we're going to give you the different options, the pros and cons. So, all right. Well, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.